It really is a pleasure to be amongst my fellow Gamecocks. I was on campus yesterday. I had a chance to speak to several of our student leaders about the importance of voting and the importance of the census. I was on campus again last week as Dr. Burks came in from the White House to meet with President Caslin and his team to talk about the university's overall response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Went ahead and put on one of my Gamecock blazers because it's important, as I noted to Dr. Burks last week as we were talking about the city's response and the partnership with the university and the work that we've been doing to slow down the acceleration of the coronavirus. The UofSC is very much a part of me. Third only to my relationship with my Lord and Savior, and the two incredible parents that he gave me, Sam and Maggie Benjamin. I credit the University of South Carolina and the opportunities afforded me there as a bright-eyed, wayward 17-year-old when I matriculated the campus over 30 years ago. Really with setting the arc of my life, giving me opportunities that I never could have imagined might be available to me. So I am a Gamecock through and through. 7 years undergrad in law school, and my blood truly runneth garnet. So the university holds a very special place in my heart. Indeed, since 1801, 15 years after the city was first chartered, the university, South Carolina College was chartered just outside the heart of the downtown of Colombia, and for over 200 years. The relationship between UofSC and the city has not only been strong and symbiotic, but we have been interconnected and interdependent in so many different ways that the university does well, the city does well, and vice versa. I am sure that when Senator John Lewis Gervais first articulated that he hoped that this new city that he hoped to be called Colombia in March of 1786, which defeated the name Washington for the name of the city. He advocated that the oppressed of all lands might find refuge under the wings of Colombia. I'm sure that at that time, in the challenging early days of this nation, that he could never have imagined that we would be home to residents literally from every one of the 194 sovereign nations of the world, that we speak 90 different languages, that because of this wonderful Carnegie One Research Institution with the top international business program in the world, because of obviously Fort Jackson, where we train the finest fighting force the world has ever seen. Over half of the U.S. Army trains here in this country, that we have become this incredible microcosm of society right here in Columbia, South Carolina. So much of it due, again, to the two forces of the University of South Carolina and Fort Jackson. And what we have been doing, what I've been doing as mayor of the city for the last 10 years, which, and as many of you may have noticed, I've decided my wife wants me to let my beard grow in a little bit. So when I first ran for mayor, I had very few gray hairs. I won't say I had none, but I had very few gray hairs. I've earned every single one of them in the last 10 years. We have been working to build what we call the most talented, educated, and entrepreneurial city in America, working by understanding what we believe a city is supposed to be. A city should be a platform for human potential, that we ought to create a place where every single one of our citizens should have the opportunity to live up to his or her God-given potential, recognizing that we all have value, that we all add value, and that if we create the right conditions here, people can thrive in a place where they can live, work, play, and prosper. They can thrive economically. They can thrive socially. They can drive culturally. But that only happens if you're very intentional about creating that type of community where people can be their very best selves. For me, that meant we had to start 10 years ago really developing a discipline as to how we were going to see the city develop. We're a unique city with unique assets like the university, like the Army's largest training base in the world, like state government, several institutions, public sector institutions because of largesse of men like Strom Thurmond and Fritz Hollings and Congressman Clyburn and others who saw resources come here over the years. But it also means that 70% of our land mass is not on the tax rolls here. So we had to spend some time really trying to do our darndest to create an environment where we could actually attract capital investment with a pro-business attitude, treat it well, and watch that investment grow over the last several years. That starts obviously with good fiscal stewardship. We had a period of time where we didn't necessarily have that in Colombia. So my goal was to make sure we took care of people's hard-earned tax dollars. We have finished 8 of the last 10 years over the budget surplus. In the last 10 years, we've never raised taxes. We've reduced our tax millage by 12 mils. We put over $250 million into our infrastructure, our water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure, working to end sanitary sewer overflows into the 3 beautiful rivers that frame our city, the Broad, the Saluda, and the Congaree. We've invested in good, thoughtful green infrastructure, passed the very first green bond certified by the Climate Bond Initiative in the country for stormwater in the wake of the 2015 floods here. We have led, as Haven mentioned, on some issues of making sure that that with gun rights come gun responsibilities. I in the prior life, I ran the state's largest second largest law enforcement agency. Served warrants with my agents in the middle of the night and took some dangerous people off the street. I'm a gun owner. I believe strongly in the right to bear arms, but also believe that with rights come responsibilities. And some of the things that we saw don't seem as much now because our kids are not in school because of the pandemic. But some of the things we saw with bump stocks and unfettered access to guns, particularly for those who displayed either through criminal histories or just because they weren't not mentally or emotionally in a position to have firearms, we had some major challenges. So we've led from the front in Colombia to make sure that that we were doing everything to make our city safer. We've invested in 21st century policing, as Haven mentioned, and we're very proud of our support for law enforcement, not just law enforcement, but thoughtful, forward-thinking law enforcement that speaks to transparency, accountability, equity, and justice. Our partnership with the university continues. Again, if the university does well, the students are here, the students are healthy, students are patronizing local businesses, if the football games are being played and hotels are being occupied, if we're finding ways to not only commercialize the intellectual property that's being created in UofSC as patent after patent happens to be cranked out of our various colleges there, but also finding ways to commercialize that property, that intellectual property in spirited ways that has allowed us to do countless numbers of social service projects all around the city that started in the various colleges at the university. I have, since 2010, started the Mayor's Fellows program that I thought would be a great start for internship opportunities for young people who might be interested in governmental public service, and found out very quickly that we were benefiting more so from the internships through the Mayor's Fellows program than the interns were, and the incredible vast knowledge and wealth of information that our fellows brought into the mayor's office every single day. As of today, we've had over 350 young people come through our office, the majority of them from the UofSC, but from all across the country. And it has been incredibly valuable to this city. Columbia benefits greatly from being the home of the University of South Carolina, because it allows us to attract all types of folks, different opinions, different backgrounds, different worldviews, different upbringings. And it allows us to have that strength of diversity of backgrounds, but also diversity of thought. And that's something I've endeavored greatly to encourage and aspire. We all ought to want to be our very best selves. I think it's impossible, very difficult to be our very best selves if, in fact, we don't put ourselves in the position to hear other opinions, to hear other ideas. And of course, to be required to not only share our ideas, because we all have opinions, but also be prepared to defend those ideas with data, or just closely held moral positions that we can defend in the field of whatever it happens to be that we're discussing. I believe that now we live in a world where so many people have their opinion way over here or way over here, and the ability to dialogue and to respect the opinions of others falls by the wayside. I do believe that conversation is facilitated when you're in an environment where you have an institution like UofSC here, the ability to look someone eye to eye, not in the black hole of the internet or Twitter, where people have both anonymity and reach, but a collegiate and collegial environment where you can recognize that two people equally yoked can see the same thing and see it very differently, but you have an opportunity to offer and defend your position. It's so important, and I believe that UofSC plays a huge role in facilitating that dialogue, which I think is essential to the body politic, essential to the America that we all believe in, not just the federal republic, but also to the ideal that we believe that that we should all be constantly striving to be the architects of that more perfect union, recognizing our country is not perfect. There's no perfect nation. I do believe this is the greatest nation in the history of the world, but it's up to each and every one of us to continue to make that so. And that means that we have to be prepared to defend our positions, advocate on principle, and work to ensure that remains true. It has become incredibly difficult this year because of a number of incredible challenges. Some of you are old enough to remember the year 1999. Some of you are not. 1999 was an incredible year where so many of us were worried about Y2K, with the impact of on our computers, those that had been programmed with COBOL and Fortran and every other ancient code. We thought the world was going to shut down, and we thought we had no idea what was going to happen next. And 2000 came in with a whimper, a party but a whimper, and some have commented that maybe 2020 is actually the year we were looking out for. We have the greatest pandemic that we've seen since 1918. We have the greatest economic disruption in an election year that this country has seen since 1932, and maybe even 1876, depending on the historian that you speak to. We've watched the American economy contract by a third. Second quarter, the quarter before that, we watched our GDP drop by almost 5%, with obviously the national debt dramatically increasing as our Congress decided to respond to the coronavirus threat. So 1918, 1932, and or 1876, and then obviously all the great social unrest around police violence or structural racism since 1968. All those things wrapped up into a couple of quarters in 1 year in 2020. And it's put us in a position where the economic challenges, the social challenges, the public health challenges, just the very threats to our way of life as we try to do some of our very, very basic things: voting, participating in the electoral process, assuring that the census is successfully executed, so that we can make sure that we're able to maintain our responsibilities to the public over the next 10 years to the next census. Every point in South Carolina historically performs very poorly on census response. Every point that you miss is, I believe, $40 million in public funding. It's important that public funding means our repatriated tax dollars coming back to us. I have to remind my friends in Washington regularly that money doesn't fall from DC like manna from heaven. This is our money that we're asking for it to come back home. So if you have a significant undercount due to the census, if you haven't filled out your census form, I really want to encourage you to do so. But the challenges are real, and we've been working closely with our business community, closely with our fellow governments and public health officials in a very intimate, intersectoral, intergovernmental, public-private partnership to try and make it through these very difficult times. And I'd be happy to talk maybe a little bit more about that in question and answer. We've been meeting since March 1st and responding very clearly with the important fact that data has to govern the day that a smart, thoughtful, data-driven response that focuses on the importance of science is going to help us deal with this. If in fact we continue to focus on testing and data that gives you good intelligence, intelligence allows you to make good public policy decisions, then in fact we will solve the public health crisis, or at least get us through it as best we can, and then it allows us to address the economic crisis, which is still looming and large and affecting our small businesses to a significant degree every single day. It has been my life's honor to serve as mayor of the city. We continue to focus on the things I think that matter most. How do you build a strong, vibrant downtown and urban core that's surrounded by great neighborhoods? And then, you know, the good thing about places like Colombia is within 15, 20 minutes, you can be in the rural hunting for boar or fishing for bass, whatever it is that you enjoying the beautiful sylvan nature of the urban oasis around the beautiful three rivers I mentioned earlier. You can do it all here, but we've had a very intentional strategy at focusing on downtown, focusing on the building and rebuilding of Bull Street, 181-acre campus that was a former mental health asylum, and investing in our small businesses and making sure that they make it, particularly through this most difficult time, historically difficult time. So a lot more work to do, but I remain committed and convinced that if in fact we're going to do it, we're going to have to do it together. I ran for mayor of the city 10 years ago on the theme of One Colombia. There's no blue Colombia, no red Colombia, no black or white or brown. That if in fact we're going to do this, it was going to require every single one of us to be our very best selves. And I feel comfortable that because of the work of so many of you on this call, we've been able to go in that direction. And I'm excited about what else we have to be. So I'll stop there, Haven, and whatever else I can do, happy to jump into some Q&A and see if we can move this conversation along.
Perfect. All right. First question for you would be, what's the #1 thing you're most proud of during your time as mayor? And what is the most ambitious goal that you have going forward?
I'm kind of a geek. So I enjoy finance and public finance. You read through my bio. I chair a group called Municipal Bonds for America. I've served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I believe strongly in what investing in infrastructure can do. In this company, I believe that actually I'm hosting a session, moderating a session for the mayors of New Orleans and Miami tomorrow or Thursday, in which we're going to talk about the role that infrastructure development can play, maybe a unique role in helping America recover from the economic crisis that we're in right now. I've been the foremost public sector advocate of what's known as municipal bonds and public finance, calling for an investment in infrastructure. America has at least, depending on who you talk to, $2 trillion to $4 trillion need, and it's allowed me to put Colombia in pole position to drive that discussion. I'm particularly proud of that. We've also led, as I mentioned, with almost $750 million of our own infrastructure investment that's allowed us to protect our environment and also make sure our folks have that very basic need of clean water It was something that the city struggled to do. Our fiscal stewardship, I'm particularly proud of. The fact that we finished 8 of the last 10 years with a budget surplus, we've not raised taxes, is something that I'm proud of. And also, I think our approach to economic development being balanced, and as well as our approach to law enforcement. The fact that you can be unabashedly supportive of the men and women who wear uniform, who run towards danger when everyone's running in the other direction, at the very same time making a very clear case for accountability and transparency and a system of justice that looks and feels like public guardians. And I think that's something that we articulated in the Justice for All plan 6 years ago almost, and we continue to focus on 21st century policing. We got a lot more to do, so much more to do. I mean, some of the issues that have been particularly pronounced during the pandemic that we knew were real issues. We've advocated for healthcare and connectivity, but the challenges of the pandemic have shown almost served as an X-ray of the American body, of our own personal infrastructure. It shows a whole lot of broken bones. Healthcare is one. The other one is obviously access to the internet and how that dramatically affects not only economic fortunes but the educational fortunes of our children. We have a project that we're rolling out just this month, as a matter of fact, that will offer free Wi-Fi to our most challenged census tracts in the entire city. So we see that as a harbinger of great things to come. So as we go forward, Wi-Fi, continued infrastructure investment, and then also some pretty cool stuff around urban farming that I think are three of the maybe the biggest, the most exciting things kind of as we go forward for the next year and a half.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from a recent retiree to Colombia, wondering thoughts on making Colombia a top city for retirees. Their view is a need to improve walkability, green spaces, bike paths, healthcare, etc. They're wondering how we can improve Colombia to attract more people like them.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously, I think this call is clear. The partnership with the university is so important to that. I know that a number of retirees have done a lot of speaking nationally to AARP and other groups focused on senior health and wellness, recognizing that that demography is destiny. That this silver tsunami that's coming over America is not a liability, but actually a blessing. I think in so many different ways. Seniors, those over 50, are actually more entrepreneurial than millennials. Also have more assets if you carve out the over 50 population, and you look at their assets in the aggregate in this country. If you treat that as GDP, it would be third only to the U.S. and China. So you're talking about a significant population. We want to bring as many people here. I couldn't agree more. High quality walkways, bikeways, a connected pedestrian experience, access to high quality cultural amenities like our museums and other forms of art that will be more available at the end of the pandemic. Strong libraries. It all matters, and it has to connect. So we have at least 2 outstanding relationships and several other grants that we've won on placemaking in partnership with the AARP and others, because we recognize that building a city for all people, an age-friendly city, is completely connected to the health and prosperity of the city. That will not change.
Going off of that question, could you discuss a bit about the initiative to improve Colombia's streets for pedestrians, bikeways, motorists, and if some of those plans will impact the 5 Points area?
Yeah, there are some aggressive plans, and I wish I had the map. I'd share my screen right now. to connect a number of important but disparate efforts, some funded by the rich and penny, some run by some nonprofits, some city efforts that show how we can connect between bikeways and thoroughfares. A wonderful, and it's not a significant expense. It wasn't significant before we came into the pandemic. About $1 million doing something meaningful downtown. There's a separate effort that's being led ably by State Representative Seth Rose and Councilman Will Brennan and others that will bring some significant pedestrian enhancements to 5 Points that they've had to work through and smooth over the city, the State Department of Transportation, as well as with the 5 Points Merchants Association. I think bears a lot of promise. So we'll see how that goes. As you might suspect, bringing together so many different folks who might have very different opinions. We are still very much a car-centric culture where we drive, a couple blocks in our F-150, and we want to make sure we have parking everywhere, and usually having a place that's pedestrian friendly and also bike friendly and car friendly is very difficult to achieve in a very safe way. That stretch of Hardin Street in 5 Points, as we know, is one of the most dangerous streets in the country. So we got to make sure we do it and do it right.
Thank you. Shifting gears, here we have a question from a participant that says, after the Black Lives Matter protests and the vandalism to the Columbus statue, you have the statue removed for safekeeping. Subsequently, you appointed a committee to decide what to do with the statue. What do you think should be done about the controversy that the statue means something completely different to Native Americans?
Okay. We actually had our very first meeting of the committee this past week, and I've not yet gotten a full report, and I'm looking forward to that from my staff. I very intentionally shared my views on why we pulled together the task force to look at the Columbus statue, but I did not want to impose my opinion on the committee. We put together an august group of business people, of Italian Americans, of Native Americans, the chair of our State Museum Commission, the head of the Historic Columbia Foundation, just a diverse group, obviously architectural historians and others, because I wanted their feedback, and I understand that there was a robust discussion around the statue, and I look forward to hearing their recommendation. We have a meaningful discussion in most places going on around history and even more so around contextualization of being able to take these busts and street names and statues, and every statue doesn't need to come down, but I think we owe it to posterity to make sure that the entire story is told about the men and women, typically men, that we memorialize and sometimes deify. So I'm looking forward to report back from the committee, and we'll make a final discussion around the statue. This is a statue that was just given to us maybe 2 decades ago. So it's not some old statue, and there's no necessarily direct relation to Christopher Columbus that we all don't enjoy here in North America. Nothing unique. Our city, I debate this with the press, is not named after Christopher Columbus. People will disagree with me. Our city is Colombia. The idea expressed in Phyllis Wheatley's poem to General George Washington for the very first time, that articulated Colombia, as she was known at that time, as somewhat of Lady Liberty, this new country that other than being a derivation of Columbus, just as America is of Amerigo's Vespucci, we're not named after Christopher Columbus. So the press writes that a lot. The shade tree historian in me likes to reference that. But we'll get the report back from our task force that we put together, and then we'll share it with the public and we'll make some decisions as to the future disposition of the statute, but we'll do it transparently, clearly, and always coming from the right place. Wanting to make sure that we tell the right history at the very same time that we more so do what I think is more important, which is focus on the future.
Great, thank you. Shifting to another hot topic of the times, how is the city of Colombia helping USC with COVID-19?
Should be, how is USC helping the city of Colombia with COVID-19? Oh Lord, numbers are going down until the kids came back. It's been, it really has been a great dialogue with President Caslin and his team. I was invited very early on, and back in late spring, early summer, as the university was kind of working through its plan as to how they're going to mitigate. You may remember the students didn't come back after spring break, and some obviously were here throughout the summer, but we knew it would be a rush of students, tens of thousands coming in this fall. It's proven to be a bit of a challenge. The understanding and appreciating the importance of social distancing, and particularly with younger people who tend to be more resilient or healthier than those who are older, who may be asymptomatic, and being frank, discouraging this very same activity that so many of us engaged in when we were in college. It's natural activity against an unnatural threat, and historic threat, one that does not recognize any authority as a common enemy, and is as contagious as anything we've come across. And as a result, we've lost countless lives in this country, and over 3,000 South Carolinians. So we've taken a very hard line approach. We've had curfews. We've enforced the governor's executive orders. We've obviously passed the masking ordinance, and also recently passed an ordinance that issues penalties to landlords who allow large house parties in violation of the governor's executive order. Just trying to do our very best to try and decelerate the spread of this virus. Until we get our arms around the public health crisis, we'll never get our arms around the economic crisis, we'll never get our arms around the educational crisis. So we've committed ourselves to do what we can in terms of the policymaking realm. At the very same time, made a long-term commitment to following data. There's no red way or blue way to defeat this virus, and everything has become so doggone political. It's only red, white, and blue if, in fact, we're going to help this country get through it. And so we've made a commitment to science, common sense, the collaboration, these intersectoral and intergovernmental partnerships, because it's the only way you can get through this. So we've been in constant communication and partnership with the university. We'll continue doing that. President Caslin has given us a wide open door, and he knows he has one with us too. So we've got to continue testing and really continue calling on the very best angels of each of us, asking everyone to do their part. Wearing a mask is not heresy. Wearing a mask is not impossible. Wearing a mask literally is the essence of mutual responsibility. The reality is that I wear my mask to protect you. You wear your mask to protect me. It is the epitome of being unselfish, and we really want to encourage folks. And when we can't encourage people, we want to require people to do what they can to protect the lives of their fellow citizens.
Absolutely. On a similar thread, what do you see as the elements of fostering a strong relationship between the school and its surrounding neighborhoods?
Wow, that's a tough one. That might be the toughest one I've gotten so far. It's always been a heck of a balancing act. I never lived in the immediate areas off campus when I was a student, or even after my student years. But oftentimes the the relationship can become very, very, very difficult between the university proper and those who live around the the campus. The argument typically from folks I engage who are students are like, well, they moved into the university neighborhood. It's called University Hill for a reason. It's because there are going to be students running around. And then the argument I get from neighbors is that that does not mean that I ought not be able to have peaceable enjoyment of my home. It doesn't mean that we should be subjected to not just noise complaints, but all types of untold activity happening in our front yard on a regular basis. It's a major challenge that I think is oftentimes enhanced by constant dialogue of the university leadership, meaning the president and staff, but also the work that the Division of Student Affairs does, and your student leadership, the work that Issy and Hannah and others do, constantly communicating with the neighborhoods. I've had in years past, Taylor Wright, who works for me as former student body president, had a assigned student who would actually come to city council meetings and make sure we were aware of all things that were happening, would take things back to the university and to the students, and we would also be able to communicate the concerns of the neighborhoods surrounding them. But I think it's constant communication, and also a significant degree of mutual respect, understanding that students are enjoying the 4 years of their undergraduate experience and maybe graduate experience, but at the very same time being able to do it and respecting the lives, the quality of life, and the personal property of those who live around campus. It's a balancing act that requires some real maturity and respect, but also usually that comes with constant communication.
Great. Okay, so moving towards downtown, this attendee asked, after a number of years away, I visited downtown Columbia and was highly impressed with its revitalization. What were the hurdles to progress this downtown initiative, and how did you overcome them?
It was all of the above were the hurdles. Now we had to, just believe firmly, as I mentioned earlier, that a great city starts downtown. The historic commercial corridors that defined every city also connect the city. Well, everyone might not be on Main Street every single day. It's where commerce happens. It's where our tax base is disproportionately produced. One tall building downtown creates more tax revenue than a 400-unit subdivision on the outskirts of town. It's not about the tax base. It's about the reality that tax dollar, that 63% of it goes to our public schools, and X amount goes to infrastructure, where you build roads and where you build a city. We've watched this amazing transformation of cities all across the world. We're now, in this country alone, 85% of our citizens now live in cities and metropolitan economies. 89% of the jobs are there. 92% of America's GDP is created in cities and metro economies. Our goal was to very intentionally focus on Main Street, the most identifiable and meaningful street in our city, and to create some sense of activity there, to get people living on Main Street, to adaptively reuse and beautify historic structures using strong public-private partnerships. We set aside $427,000 in community development block grant dollars to put together a public-private partnership with individuals who had these beautiful old buildings that were hideous because of changes that had been made to them 40, 50 years ago to keep up with the times. We wanted to restore them back to their original beautiful structures. So we had a partnership that we put down a certain amount, and they had to put down the rest, and that $400,000 led to, I wouldn't say $6 or $7 million worth of private sector capital, purely focused on beautifying facades. That then led to more restaurants then wanting to be in that space, and retail shops wanting to be in that space. We partnered with the Colombia Museum of Art that occupies an old Macy's building in the Boyd family to make sure that Boyd Plaza will become someplace special, a convenient space of a de facto public park where we could commune and enjoy the beauty of Main Street. We've invested in dozens of pieces of public art through One Colombia to again create that experience. Working with the university and professors like Dr. Bobby Donaldson, we've invested in historic preservation and wayfinding signs throughout downtown that articulate the importance of everything from civil rights history to African American history to Jewish history throughout Colombia. And probably the biggest economic development opportunity we had was the hub. Was the former 452,000 square foot empty former SCANA headquarters that I'd walked through with President Caslin's predecessor, Dr. Vestides, time and again to try and find some way to bring the university downtown. The reality is that the university is separated from downtown by the 16-acre campus that is the state capital. And we needed to create some type of a pedestrian experience that connected these centers of gravity with each other. And we did that when we created core spaces to the hub and brought 880 students to Main Street. And it's a significant opportunity to complement all the other second story housing that we had and just created a great jolt in the arm. But investing in the arts, investing in infrastructure, investing in that walkability and bikeability and supporting our restaurants, it really has to turn the corner. And I think year after year, the readers of the Free Times will remark that that the revitalization of the Main Street is the best thing that we've done so far. And I'm excited that will be a part of our legacy.
Keeping on the thread of businesses in Colombia, what are some of the business opportunities that people don't think of that are available in Colombia? And what type of businesses are you hopeful to bring to the city? Do you think the city and state has enough tax incentives in place to draw in television and film production like the Atlanta model, or have there been any discussions about this topic?
There's a lot of questions in one, by the way. Obviously, we have some wonderful built-in strengths that a lot of people don't know about. The financial services infrastructure and the insurance technology infrastructure that exists here is laudable. Financial services, obviously, they're centers of New York and San Francisco and Charlotte, and even Birmingham to some degree. But we have significant legacy financial services infrastructure here that puts us in a different plane to be able to service a number of businesses. As relates to insurance technology, I would say that we are definitely Silicon Valley of the South. Hartford, Connecticut obviously stands out in that space more than anyone else. But because of Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, Aflac, Unum, Colonial Life, we've been able to attract great businesses like Capgemini and spin-off businesses that now Capgemini just in the last couple of years has employed several hundred people on the Bull Street campus. The ability to have a low cost of doing business is important. And while tax incentives certainly play a role, we have to make sure that we use them very effectively to attract the types of businesses and the types of investment that we want to have in terms of quality investment, as well as those that might allow us to thrive long term, making sure we build a great and strong tax base. We have not kept the pace as a state as it relates to the movie and television industry, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. The state years ago had begun to show some dexterity, particularly landing. We had a couple movies here in Colombia, but the Beaufort and Charleston areas and others were able to land not just some TV shows, but also some top flight movies. North Carolina had shown some dexterity as well. They also fell by the wayside. So you've watched Georgia just change the game. Places like New Mexico and others, and but a lot of us have not I think, fully appreciate, I say us meaning policymakers, have not been able to fully appreciate the importance of the creative economy, and not that it's not just about recruiting a movie to be developed here, but all of the other supporting staff and industries that have to go into making a film here really has an amazing effect on your overall economy. So it's something that that I've supported, but it has not gotten the support or the allocations in our state legislature that it should. But I believe it should. It should in the future.
Thank you. So moving on to another question that says, South Carolina has suffered from a brain drain where many of its best and brightest leave the state because of the historic and contemporary ceilings that limit opportunities for Black people. How do we address that reality and make South Carolina an attractive place for more of us to live?
I just had my 13-year-old bring me my charger. I'd forgotten to put in my plug up my my iPad. Yeah, that's something that's been particularly important to us as when I came into office and talked about being one Colombia. The brain drain was real, but and I would be frank, not only for African Americans. We had a huge challenge across this city and indeed this state of a lot of our best and brightest, not all of them. We were able to retain significant talent, but folks just not seeing the economic or educational opportunities or even the cultural acceptance that would allow them to identify with their home state. They saw themselves, they saw communities that reflected themselves, reflected ideas, ideals, and values much more than what they were seeing in their own hometown. And I thought that was robbery, and felt that we needed to make sure we were building a community that allowed each and every one of us, again, to do the great things that I believe God has in store for each and every one of us. It's pretty cool. So over the last few years alone, 2 years ago, we were named one of the best small cities in the U.S. by National Geographic. Smart Asset, 2 years in a row, named us either number 2 or number 4 in the country as the places where millennials are moving. Seattle has our number. We're gonna catch up with them at some point. And Washington Post said that between the 5 years between 2012 and 2016, we're one of the top 10 destinations for white, Black, Hispanic, and Asian individuals who are moving. So the goal was to create a place where, again, where everyone could have an opportunity not only to thrive, and obviously the changes we've seen on the future of work and the ability to work different places than you live. It's giving people more flexibility. And if you, in fact, give them world-class cultural opportunities, a climate that is second to none with the exception of 2 months in the summer, I have to admit, where it's hotter than Hades. I can say that because all of you are Gamecocks, so you know exactly how hot it gets here in the summer. That if you can give people a great cost of living and just the ability to be themselves, to be their authentic selves, what I tell our 13-year-old and our 15-year-old every single day. A city is supposed to be a platform for human potential, a place that can't be gerrymandered, that doesn't need to be political, but needs to be a place where people can stand up on their own 2 feet, sometimes with help from others, and be their very best selves. That doesn't happen everywhere. And we've aspired to build that kind of city here in Colombia. We're perfect? Absolutely not. But I do believe that the feel that people have here of possibility, that we can indeed be great, that we can indeed ring this bell or that bell, that the feel's changed over the last 10 years, and I'm particularly proud of that.
Thank you. Okay, here's another one that may have a few questions at once for you.
Okay.
Person put, Colombia has a lot of abandoned commercial space. Living in the Northeast, I'm concerned about the number of places such as Columbia Mall and Sand Hills that are abandoned. How do we attract businesses and get them to rebuild in those abandoned locations? And what can a citizen do to be more involved in the future of their community to ensure sensible business growth?
Sure. No, both great questions. I think the challenges, there's some similar challenges, just the two examples you made, that Columbia Mall and Sandhills might face. And then there are also distinct challenges. I'll answer the first question, the last question first. And obviously, we have so many different ways to get involved. Obviously, you can get involved through Richland County. Both of those properties are in Richland County. So they have a planning commission, zoning board, and other places. So that's really a place you can really get involved, particularly if you're interested in business growth. Oftentimes, there are so many different obstructions, and we've endeavored to make that easier for people to get into business, to cash flow, and be successful, and hopefully grow in the city of Columbia and in the Richland County to work on that too. That serving on one of those boards or commissions is a great place to start. I started on the Columbia Planning Commission, 26 years ago, approving large deals. Had one of my former professors and sitting next to me, and it was a great place to learn kind of the lay of the land. So I encourage, if you're looking at City of Columbia, to look at the Planning Commission, look at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and also maybe the Design Development Review Commission as three places to start. But if you can actually email me, Stephen.Benjamin, it's a PH, at columbiasc.gov, or just check out the city website. It's pretty easy to navigate and check out the different boards and commissions that you can potentially serve on. What we're seeing in malls in particular, we're seeing the world change. I mean, we're watching the retail scene change with the Amazons of the world and every other way that people can order things online, and we're watching street level retail change very dramatically, particularly manufactured retail in terms of malls and the like. People are gravitating much more towards authentic spaces on a main street where there's a much larger experience. But that Columbia Mall was in the very first, this is on Two Notch Road for some of you may not be familiar. That's in the first wave of suburban development, from 30, almost 40 years ago. It's been vacant for quite some time, and Sandhills has, however, faced, I think, some of the more recent challenges we mentioned about online shopping that's affecting retail all across the country. It's been particularly devastating in some of the newer malls. Obviously, I mentioned our commitment to keeping taxes low, because I believe that plays a role in it. But but we got some larger macro issues. I think we're all going to have to kind of think creatively as to how we deal with them, how we manage through them. We've done a lot of work with Harvard University and Howard University, and some partnerships with Google and the African American Mayors Association around the future of work. And you look at even a company like Facebook, or some of you may remember Kodak. Kodak in 1963, had I want to say 8 or 10 times the number of employees, 75,000 employees or so, at the same revenue scale that Facebook had, with 6,000 employees in 2013, 50 years later. The world's just changing very dramatically, and we're going to have to figure out how, with the future of work, with the advent of advanced machine learning and automation, how do we change along with that while still creating unique shopping and retail experiences against a very difficult backdrop. It's a challenge. We had that challenge, obviously, on places like Main Street and Vista and 5 Points, and a unique challenge on Bull Street. So we're going to keep doing that, but we need as many voices involved as possible. So I encourage you to look at the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and DDRC as a starter to potentially get involved in helping direct some of those opportunities here in the Midlands.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we are about out of time. So I apologize to those who we did not get to your question yet, but There were also a lot of nice sentiments that I'll be sure to pass along to Mayor Benjamin after this event. But thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Mayor Benjamin, for your time today. We know it's very valuable, and I know that everyone really enjoyed hearing all of your insights about Colombia.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and y'all take care. God bless you. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.